everyone, and thank you for listening to BrainFruits, the podcast on women changemakers. I'm your host, Hanna Becker, and today I have the great pleasure to introduce you to Hanna Kleinings. Hanna is a former bar manager and assistant general manager who went tech. Hanna now works in customer success and growth at a really well-known AI company called Levity. It's such a pleasure to have you today, Hanna. Welcome to BrainFruits.
Hi, thanks for having me. Always love to talk about AI and bartending. So let's dive right in.
That is quite a mix, Hanna. Bartending and AI. You're currently heading customer success in an AI startup called Levity, and you're focusing here really much on democratizing AI and empowering small businesses to reap the benefits of technology. You do this through like a really simple no coding approach. I'm not sure if you're using any cocktail mixes in there or how this no coding approach comes about. And it really says that with Levity that you don't need any technical skills to implement AI driven processes in business. But first of all, I would love to hear a little bit more about yourself. Hanna, you started out as a bar manager and now you help businesses to get rid of really boring tasks using AI. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, your journey, and how you got interested to work with AI?
How much time do you have? So I'm Estonian by birthright, and I think that has definitely played a lot into all of this mix of career changes and moving from customer service to customer success. So I don't know how much you or your listeners know about Estonia. We're a tiny country, even though we're 1 square kilometer bigger than Denmark, but we are a digital nation. So we do have the most unicorns per capita in the world. And there are certain digitalization practices that we're born and raised with, and we take things very much for granted. I left Estonia when I turned 18 and I moved to China. And I spent a couple of years traveling here and there, and bar management and service was one of those jobs you can do anywhere if you have the passion and the right team to do it with. But I did end up starting a bachelor's degree in Copenhagen, actually in CBS. And during that time, I did an exchange semester in Shanghai as well. And I think that's where the AI really kicked in, where you get to go to a country which is incredibly different from anything out there, really, where the perspective on digitalization is really about empowerment rather than just being efficient. I think most of the people already know about WeChat and Tencent and Alibaba and how they've been driving businesses through digitalization. And I think that's where it really clicked for me of what AI can actually do for an everyday person and a small business owner. I decided to stay in Denmark for a while and continue with a master's degree, and I also did a SEMS degree. And I ended up going on my exchange there to Dublin, which is a bit of a tech hub in Europe. So I got to meet a lot of different companies with a lot of different perspectives of how digitalization should work. And I got to work with a lot of companies right during the brink of COVID times of moving to a digital workspace and improving digital health in a workplace as well. So I think that was where things started to really twist for me and figuring out that technology and AI is definitely an area that I don't know much about, but I want to get more into. So I found Levity through the SEMS network. Actually, one of the previous interns used to study with SEMS as well. And now I'm here and talking to customers and helping them figuring out their automation dreams.
I would be super curious because it is quite a jump. I mean, from starting out as a bar manager to getting interested into AI, and nowadays, I think a lot of our listeners would probably have to question, like, what helped you to find the courage to change your career from
Courage is a very big word. So I'm a firm believer that all of us have more than one big passion in life. And I think the love for service industry and bar management has incredibly deep roots in me. It's something about creating an experience. It's also doing something with your hands and creating an atmosphere. But also in the bigger picture of things, it all comes really down to people and talking to people and getting to the root of it. Um, if anybody is ever considering a career in customer success or management consulting, customer service is a fantastic area to get to learn about people and how they work and how they develop grit day after day, what motivates them. I always used to say when I was in uni that we tend to be incredibly detached in university settings of how things in real life really work. Um, and we read about different organizational theories and leadership theories and methodologies, but in an environment like running a bar or a kitchen, you can actually test some of these things out and see if they actually hold real value in the real world. But I think it's also about doing all of these and having room to make mistakes and having room to experiment with different teams, different projects, and figuring out what that great passion of in your life is. One of them is for me being bartender, but the other one is technology. And I think it's in those senses, it's not that big of a jump to going from people to people.
I think I like that bridge a lot, going from people to people. And as you say, not take everything at face value and really testing some of these high stake theories that we get taught in university. And then you find yourself trying to implement such in maybe a bar or a restaurant, and you think, oh wow, this is probably much more difficult than what they teach you in university now.
Definitely.
Getting to the challenge that we want to discuss today, there's still like a huge gender disparity in driving tech implementation in organizations. What's your experience with that?
So when we're talking about my experience, at least at Levity, I took a little look at the people I've had conversations in the past year about automation and AI-driven processes. And it's pretty safe to say that around 90% of the people I try to talk to who try to test new solutions are men. And I don't think it's not because men are necessarily the process owners, but I think it has something to do with this room for exploration and curiosity and having the mentality that it's okay to fail and it's okay to just go in and try things. What I don't mean to say is that it's a gendered mindset that men are like this and women are like that, but I think it's the environment we create for ourselves at a workplace. I had a call the other day with one of our users, and she made a comment how rare it is to have three women in a Zoomed call discussing machine learning and AI processes. I wish I had the answer to that. It's there is definitely a disparity, but it comes down to if it's a nature or nurture problem. Is this a institutionalized problem? Are there not enough women entering data science and machine learning fields? Is this a systematic reason or something else behind it? Or if it's more about the work environment we create for ourselves, where women who become process owners who drive these changes don't get the buy-in necessarily from executives.
I think that's a great recommendation already, also to think about what or which company to select when you are at the stage where you think maybe, okay, I want to change my career. What are the options out there? I want to work in tech. What type? A lot of people go by, oh, what job title could I see myself doing? But that's just a title, and it doesn't really mean anything. In the end, it comes down to what value you can bring in what environment. And I love this idea of nurturing. Is this environment going to give you the nurture that you need to be impactful, to create and drive value? Because it's always two things. Like, it's your internal power that you have innately, and then an environment being able to actually take that and get it out of you, right? So it's always like meeting the sweet spot between nurturing yourself and environment and being nurtured by the environment. How did you start to look for a career in tech? You mentioned the SENS network, so you were already like in a predefined setting, but how did you approach that internally? Like, what made you look up certain companies? what got you going and what kept you going?
A very interesting question that doesn't have necessarily the most PC answer. I got involved with a lot of different projects in my uni times, and a lot of these were focused on strategy and technology and how we actually utilize technology in our real world situation. And a lot of the academics that we covered and the literature we read was all about how we have to be in control of the tech and use these in the right way, that there's a magic silver bullet that's going to solve all our life problems. And that necessarily didn't really resonate with me. What did actually sort of instill this self-confidence in me was one of the projects that we ran together with a Danish company. And I realized how frustrated I was getting by this notion that people hate change, and people who say that they don't hate change probably also hate change. It's a completely normal human reaction to changing occurrences. And I remember getting incredibly frustrated in trying to change certain behaviors or trying to get people to understand a certain technology. And then I realized that the frustration was only there because I genuinely cared. And I wouldn't have been so affected by this either positively or negatively if there wasn't something there for me to explore. And then just going down that rabbit hole and getting into different webinars and reading different books about it, ended up writing my master thesis about leadership and how leadership changes in the era of artificial intelligence, and what the expectations we have in this environment that we're creating in actually has. And that sort of confirmed that I found my place, at least for the time being.
So Hanna, you were telling us about the approach you took to get involved into tech by a different project. Like, let's assume I wouldn't have the opportunity to get involved into so many projects. And you mentioned that you had this innate self-confidence that got you going to look for tech jobs. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you developed the self-confidence and what it is really that gets you to be so confident?
There's this saying, and I know it sounds like a cliche, but if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. And I think that's really, if you don't have the chance to go and get involved in different projects or in different group work or something similar, if you don't have a mentor network out there that you can join, then go and find one. There's always resources out there, and it's really about your own drive. If this is something that you want to do, it's not going to magically appear in front of you. You have to go and seek out those opportunities yourself. Now, that said, self-confidence is this funny thing where even the most confident people still struggle with imposter syndrome. Even me on a day-to-day basis, sometimes these thoughts creep in. Is like, I don't belong here. I'm just a bartender. What am I doing talking about AI and no code, and I have no technical background whatsoever? And that comes down to how you frame these problems, and if you consider them a problem at all. I try to frame these types of things more in the lines of questions. Why am I feeling this way, and how can I work through this problem of not belonging? And mostly it comes down to having confidence in your knowledge or having confidence in your emotional intelligence. And we all do possess that. There is always somebody out there you can go and ask, hey, you seem like you have a fantastic career. Can I have 10 minutes of your time to pick your brain on this or this topic that you're a specialist in? People are more than happy to always share their experiences. I know I am, and I've had people reach out to me in those senses. And there's always somebody out there who's going to say yes.
That's a great recommendation. Reaching out and taking ownership over your own career path, I think, is a really, really, really important aspect that we just have to realize that it's upon us to go ahead and seek what we want and not stop, even if we might not get lucky in the first take. Looking where you are now, what is it that you wished you would have known or experienced earlier?
when we come down or back to the self-confidence thing, knowing that you're not alone. I read a study where 76% of women have reported that they have had doubts about career changes or doubts about their skill sets. And I think that's an astounding number. Whenever you feel scared to raise a hand during class and ask a question, there's a pretty good chance that somebody else wants to ask the same question. It's just about grabbing the bull by the horns, really. But I think knowing that whatever questions or doubts I have, that there are answers out there. It's not a mystery. Would have definitely helped me, I think, 10 years ago when I was in the middle of deciding whether I should go to university or not, and then opting to study something that I felt passionate about during that time.
Nowadays we have to stop having this idea about a fixed career path where you just start out as a doctor and you will necessarily always treat patients. Maybe you're not going to treat patients all the time. Maybe you're going to AI problems for some
Exactly.
part of your career.
And a lot of the jobs that we have today, like customer success managers, we didn't even have a term for this. We didn't have a department for this 5 years ago. So these are all these new types of jobs that are popping up. Who knows what's going to be out there in 5 years, in 10 years? The job that you might be incredibly passionate about might just not exist yet. And I think that's a really, really exciting time to get involved in different projects.
There's always an opportunity to do something different. And it's good to listen to other people's stories and see how they've actually changed their career. So I really like that we have the time today to sit down. And having heard about your successful career change now, what are some of the recommendations or the brain foods that you would like to share with our community of listeners?
Definitely be curious. And I think it's not necessarily a thing for all women to go out there, but I think it applies for everyone. Just be curious about finding out what you don't know and dive in, but also stay true to yourself. And if you have a gut feeling that something is making you spark and something makes you smile when you work on it, go and dive deep into it. And as I said, everybody, I think, has more than one passion in life. And I think this diversity is incredibly valuable and it's worth exploring. But also have a voice wherever you go into your workspace and create that nurturing environment around you, or have that at least as an evaluation criteria, for yourself, for your future. And if you by any chance are ever in doubt and have imposter syndrome moments, there's a fantastic book called Humans, A Brief History of How We Fucked It All Up. So if you ever feel bad about or not knowledgeable enough, I highly recommend reading the book. And it puts things a little bit more into perspective.
That is a great recommendation. I have not heard about the book, and I think I will definitely get that for myself as well. Just to wrap it up, if there's someone that would be curious to get in touch with you, where can listeners find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. You can always reach out to me, sending me a message. Just let me know how you heard about me, and I'll make sure to answer you in due time.
Changing your career might just be what you need for 2022.